Let me tell you a story. A story not from New York, not from the Silicon Valley, not from New Delhi, not from Bombay, not from Chennai. The story is from a small village in Pudukkottai in Tamil Nadu. And this happened 25 years ago. A story about a woman who learned three things: to read, to write, and to ride a bicycle. And she taught another woman and another woman. Soon, there were thousands of women cycling from their homes and cycling into a world of words, printed words, written words. The project was called Arivoli, the light of knowledge. These women, one by one, cycled from penury, so to say, into a world of pride. They traveled from ignominy at times to a world of independence, from a world of depression into a world of joy. Basically, this project was not a cycling project. This is a project of literacy, a literacy project. The cycle was just a vehicle. The print newspaper was the accelerator. Right? 25 years later, the Times of India revisited this story. This was in June 2025, this year. And this became one of the most read stories in the newspaper that month. And a while later, somebody put it up on Instagram. What you might have taken about 20 minutes to read was all available in 20 seconds in an Insta form. Fantastic job. But we also found that people who visited the Insta page and read the digital aspects of it, came back to read the print format. How we know? It's because mostly not the print format, the e-paper of the printed paper. So again, this shows how the power of print recurs. A 25-year-old story comes back in print and it reignites that passion and drives people to revisit a success, a revolution. Why does this happen? Because print immerses you, right? It doesn't just tell you a story, it transports you. And at times it transforms you, I think. And science tells us why. See, when we touch a paper, there is that tactile thing about there is a feel, there's a smell of the ink, which I'm addicted to. The smell of the newsprint. The younger lot might be frowning at me, I'm sure. But then, believe me, it's quite intoxicating, especially with the morning coffee or tea, if you may. Also, it's much more than the touch and feel of the newspaper, which some of us oldies are addicted to. It's also about, there is a more to it, the science aspect of it. University of Valencia, a study shows that people who read newspapers, or book for that matter, anything which is in the printed form, the physical form, are more likely to retain it 6 to 8 times, and their comprehension of the subject that they read is 6 to 8 times more than something of the same subject, of the same thing you read on a screen. Another study, I think this from Norway, which says it's not just about retention of what you read, but it's also about empathy. People who read a newspaper, some people who read things in print, are more likely to be more empathetic, more involved in societal issues. So this comes to the point, brings us to the point that it's not just a written word. The printed word is not something that just opens your mind, it opens your heart too. What's the whole idea of retaining some knowledge, wisdom, unless it has an impact? Especially we journalists believe, or we live in the hope that we change the world. Of course, we don't pretend to change the world, but bring about small changes every day. And I don't claim that, a 1,000-word editorial in a newspaper has stopped the war in Ukraine or Palestine. But a 100-word story in a local newspaper, I can tell you, has stopped the sewage flowing on the street. How do I know? See, we journalists, most of us in the production line, are very nocturnal animals. When you go to sleep, we wake up. We try to produce a paper so that it's delivered with your morning coffee at home. But then I do get a lot of wake-up calls, early wake-up calls, which are very unpleasant. And when I know a bureaucrat or a politician is calling me, I know that person is very unhappy at the other end. And that makes me happy in a way, not in a very vicarious pleasure way, but happy in a way that tens of thousands of my readers, it shows they are happy because we have taken up a case. We have pointed out a mistake. It could be the sewage on the street, it could be the garbage uncleared or the dead dog on the street, something which we pointed out, and somebody wasn't happy that we wrote about it. But that person also tells me that, sir, we have cleared the street, it's now neat, but again, you shouldn't have written about it. So I think that's the biggest emotional reward a journalist gets. Of course, digital also does a fantastic job on this, but then the way print is taken seriously, at least by the governments, existing governments, I can't predict 20 years from now, that it's very rewarding in the sense that it creates an impact. And talking about impact, we also do campaigns. Print campaigns have been scientifically proven to have a better long-lasting impact than some of the digital campaigns. Of course, digital is huge. We also use digital media to further our campaigns, our print campaigns. That's another matter I'll come to. This is one of the best, I would say, the most strenuous campaigns which we have done. We all know about the auto drivers of Chennai. At the cost of generalizing, I would say that the most notorious or infamous people, because they take passengers for a ride, literally and figuratively. So we thought that we should put an end to it, or at least try to put an end to it. We had long discussions, almost a year of discussions before we decided to take this up, because we wanted to show some results, not just a hit and run. So we took it up. We did stories day after day, night after day on this campaign. We spoke to drivers, we spoke to lawmakers, we spoke to traffic policemen, we spoke to passengers, of course, thousands of them. And finally, we ran it for almost 2.5 years. And it forced somebody to file a public interest litigation. And finally, the Supreme Court gave an observation based on which the state of Tamil Nadu, the government came out with an order. They made meters compulsory again. And also empowered the traffic police to crack down on erring auto drivers. It's another matter, they are back to square one. This is another campaign which we did last year called Roads So Annoying. Most of the times the culprits are we ourselves, the motorists. So this was more about wrong side driving, driving without helmet, riding without helmet, driving without seat belts. Tamil Nadu has the dubious distinction of losing the most number of lives on streets every year, more than 16,000 if I'm not wrong. So this campaign we ran for 6 to 7 months, and of course we had some great results in the term. It's so much that this traffic police themselves want to collaborate with us, and we did a lot of stuff. I'm not saying that our roads have become much safer now, but at least I believe that if we don't do this, the print media doesn't do this, it could get just worse. Of course, as I said, digital has been a constant support for us. I'm not deriding the benefits of digital. Digital is huge. It's booming. 1 billion people, Indians, 1 billion people are right now online. Trillions of tweets and reels are being watched, being produced. However, even today, do you know that the major revenue of a legacy media organization still comes from the print? Of course, on one side, digital is growing at a rapid pace, maybe 60-70% a year in terms of getting eyeballs. But when it comes to revenue, print continues to be the driving engine of media houses. It could change in the coming years. It will be well good. And we all, initially maybe 10-15 years ago, we thought that we should put digital first. And of course, we did project digital. Now, I think most of the media organizations with digital and print operations and television operations now believe that everything comes first. It's like a loop. Something that starts in print or digital comes back to print, and it continues with a catalytic action, I believe. So this is going to be a symbiosis. This is not print versus digital, but print holding hands with digital. All I'm trying to tell you is that, yes, newspapers might be dying in the US and in India, but newspapers also remain relevant. New York Times continues to be the most respected and the most feared by the establishment, if I may. But the bigger enemy, the only enemy probably is fake news. I believe that fake news is a bit of an oxymoron because it contradicts itself. If it's fake, it's not news. But fake news continues to spread faster than truth. That's how it is. People are entertained by fake news. They are enthralled by fake news. They know it's fake news, but still they read it because it entertains them. But the good thing is that, yes, they do know it's fake. It could be misinformation, it could be disinformation. I'm sure that you all know the difference between the two. Misinformation is something which we as journalists are also accused of, rightfully so. Mistakes are misinformation. Disinformation is a calculated, strategic way of spreading fake news. But fake news, as I said, is probably a good thing that has happened. And I love this man called Charlie Beckett, who's a professor at the London School of Economics, who said, the best thing that has happened to good journalism is fake news. Because people will now come back to credible sources of information. And credibility is one of the biggest assets of serious journalism. And print journalism continues to be the mainstay and the flag bearer of credibility. This, again, studies have shown that even if something you read, you hear on social media or on a digital platform, people tend to go back and check with the print media for credibility. So for 30 years, I've been told of my career, 30 years of my career as a journalist, I've been told print medium is dying. And have been consistently saying, no, it's not dying. I continue to say that. In the first 15 years, probably I said this out of desperation because I thought that I'll lose my job, my profession is going to dogs. But now I stand with the same, I'm telling you the same, not out of desperation, but out of conviction. Newspapers will continue to live. Yeah, some of them will die. The big ones may continue to even grow. There are signs of growth. So it's true that an 18-year-old may not, my son doesn't pick up a newspaper. 18-year-old may not pick up a newspaper. But mind you, a 38-year-old, some of them at least, they do pick up the morning newspaper. And with life expectancy about 72, I'm told now, India's life expectancy, there's a good chance that for another 30 years you'll continue to pick up the newspaper. So I'm not going out of business. So tomorrow morning, I would say that when you pick up your newspaper along with your coffee, hopefully you'll do, don't think you're outdated. Believe you are holding tomorrow's history today in your hands. In your hands, you're holding a revolution. Thank you.